Why Psychologists Study the Duchenne Smile, and What It Means for You. By Danny Peck, updated October 5, 2022. When we speak of smiles, our first thought may be a smile of pure happiness. There are other smiles, too, though. There's the smile of fear, the smile of embarrassment, the smile of anger. These smiles have their own distinct physical characteristics. The Duchenne smile is a very unique type of smile that psychologists have been studying for over a century. The Duchenne smile is the smile that continues to fascinate researchers and the public alike. What is the Duchenne smile? The Duchenne smile is named after Guillaume Duchenne, a French anatomist who studied many different expressions of emotion, focusing on the smile of pure enjoyment. He identified the facial movements that make this smile different from other types of smiles. Duchenne smile definition. The exact definition of the Duchenne smile is a bit technical, but we'll break it down for you. A Duchenne smile is a natural smile of enjoyment, made by contracting the zygomatic major muscle and the orbicularis oculi muscle. It's often quite involuntary, and experienced during times of genuine happiness or enjoyment. What does the Duchenne smile look like? When you see someone displaying a Duchenne smile, you naturally feel positive emotions for the person smiling. The smile is distinctive, with the mouth turning up, the zygomatic major muscle, the cheeks lifting, and the eye sockets crinkling to create crow's feet, the orbicularis oculi. What makes the Duchenne smile so special? The Duchenne smile is different from a non-Duchenne smile in several ways. First, the Duchenne smile uses both the zygomatic major and the orbicularis oculi. A non-Duchenne smile doesn't reach the eyes but resides only on the lips and possibly the cheeks. Second, the Duchenne smile is considered a natural smile of enjoyment. In the past, the consensus among researchers was that a true Duchenne smile couldn't be faked. More recent research calls that into question. Now, researchers spend more time trying to find out how we benefit from and how we can produce the Duchenne smile. Early study of smiles. Artists have been captivated by smiles throughout history. No smile is quite like the smile of the Sphinx or the Mona Lisa smile. Smiles have been a subject of scientific interest for at least a century. To most researchers, the Duchenne smile is the most interesting, partly because of the question about whether we can produce it on command. This subject has drawn interest from some of the most famous scientists in the world. Duchenne. Guillaume Duchenne had an unusual way of conducting research. Using people at a psychological hospital as subjects, Duchenne produced various expressions by stimulating facial muscles with electrical current. The procedure was said to be extremely painful. In fact, Duchenne sometimes used the recently severed heads of criminals who had died by capital punishment to relieve the people in the hospital from enduring the study. Eventually, he published a book explaining what he found through his studies. The book was called Mécanisme de la physionomie humaine, published in French in 1862. In the book, Duchenne describes and explains his research on the smile that bears his name. Duchenne was the first to identify the smile that included both the zygomatic major and the orbicularis oculi and signified pure joy. Darwin. During the same historical period when Duchenne did his work, Charles Darwin studied facial expressions and their role in the survival and evolution of the human species. In 1872, Darwin published a book called Expression of the Emotions in Man and Animals, which dealt with the types of expressions we use, what they look like, and what purposes they serve for communication and cohesiveness of groups. Diagrams within this book show the muscles responsible for making our facial expressions. Darwin goes on to discuss his interpretations of expressions like the smile of joy, which roughly correlates to the Duchenne smile. In fact, within this text, Darwin mentions Duchenne and gives him credit for successfully explaining how those muscles create the distinct smile. Carney Landis. A psychology student at the University of Minnesota, Carney Landis conducted some pretty bizarre and overall unethical experiments to study human facial expressions. He put his subjects in unexpected situations and photographed them. Some of the situations included putting their hand in what turned out to be a bucket of frogs, watching porn, smelling ammonia, and even being asked to decapitate rats, which 1/3 of participants did, while the other 2/3 who refused were made to watch as Landis did it for them. Landis's original question was whether feelings about the situation cause the facial expression, and if all people share a common expression when experiencing things like joy, fear, etc. His study was published in 1924, in the Journal of Comparative Psychology, and quickly caught on within the field of psychological research. A lingering problem with Landis' study is that he failed to recognize the subtleties of how different facial expressions can show very different emotions. He didn't recognize the Duchenne smile and said that smiles were common in any situation. He saw no relation between the smile and the sense of enjoyment or satisfaction. However, Landis did accomplish something positive and meaningful with his work. That is, he asked a question that would be the subject of study for the next 90+ years: do emotions cause expressions, or is it the other way around? Ekman and Friesen. Finally, in the 1970s, Paul Ekman and Wallace Friesen brought back the idea of the Duchenne smile. They also cataloged 3,000 facial expressions in their coding system called the Facial Action Coding System, which has been an extremely helpful tool for researchers studying the Duchenne smile and other expressions. The fax shows photos of the expression, its description, and the facial muscles used to produce it. In their guide, you can see the action of the zygomatic major and the orbicularis oculi, although each is shown separately. Psychologists' goals for studying the Duchenne smile. So, why do psychological researchers study facial expressions, anyway? Sure, they're interesting, but what purpose can this serve? And, why study the Duchenne smile specifically? One thing you need to understand is that this smile involves action in both the brain and the muscles of the face, so learning about it helps psychologists understand the mind-body connection better. The Duchenne smile also impacts the situation you're in at the moment, so there's a social aspect to it. Finally, the smile can be an indicator of emotion, a subject that's incredibly important to psychologists. Here are some of the specific reasons they study it. To understand better how the brain processes facial expressions. When we see someone's facial expressions, how do we know what emotion they're expressing? Some neuroscientists recently asked this question. They took EEGs of people smiling to find out if their brains would process other people's emotions differently depending on their expressions. The subjects were told to smile or hold a neutral face. Then, they were shown photos of people with neutral faces. When the subject smiled, their brain showed different processing than when they held a neutral face and viewed the photos. This study on smiling, published in 2015, didn't specifically address the Duchenne smile. However, it did show some interesting facts about facial expressions that might later be applied to the Duchenne smile. You can read more about this at betterhelp.com.